the silent depths of an Istanbul dawn, in the year 1623, a story unfolded that no imperial chronicle dared record. The empire stretched across 3 continents its armies feared, its palaces glittering with gold. But inside these marble walls, behind silk curtains and guarded gates, there echoed a scream, not from the battlefield but from the trembling throat of a princess. She was only 15. Fatima Sultan, daughter of Sultan Ahmed I, one of the most powerful men alive. To the outside world she was a jewel of empire, but to those inside the harem she was something else. A sacrifice. Some accounts whisper that her cries, half fear, half supplication, bounced against the golden corridors like icy echoes. Even the eunuchs, men hardened by horror, dared not come. In the weeks before her marriage, Fatima Sultan was taken into what palace whispers called the Pavilion of Preparation. To outsiders it was merely a bridal chamber, but to those who knew its secrets it was something else entirely. A place where princesses were broken before they were given away. An elderly governess named Gulnar Hatun was placed in charge of Fatma's training. Officially it was called terbiye, instruction in grace and etiquette. In truth, it was a ritual of submission. Day after day, Fatma was forced to rehearse gestures of reverence. She was taught the exact angle of a bow, the precise number of steps to take when approaching her future husband, the tone in which she must speak, soft, submissive. Without question, her vocabulary was stripped bare. Words of curiosity and wit were replaced with a smaller lexicon: gratitude, apology, acceptance, supplication. Every mistake brought punishment: fasting, isolation, or endless repetition until her will bent. The girl who once debated astronomy with scholars now recited only verses of obedience. Her brilliance dimmed candle by candle. Perhaps the cruelest humiliation of all was this. Twice a week, Fatma was ordered to serve her father's concubines. She dressed them. She washed them. She adjusted their veils before they entered the Sultan's chamber. Imagine the indignity. The daughter of the Sultan, once admired for her brilliance, forced to bow before women who had once been slaves. Each act was a message: you are not above them. You are less. Some accounts even whisper that she wept uncontrollably as she prepared these women, her tears hidden in the folds of their silks. A week before the morning of Fatma Sultan's wedding arrived not with joy, but with a thunder of drums. To the people of Istanbul it was a festival, proof of the empire's splendor, the unity of throne and army. But for Fatma herself, hidden behind veils of silk, it was a day of dread. In the eyes of the empire, a royal wedding was never about love. It was politics dressed in silk. The people saw a dazzling parade, thousands of janissaries, their armor glinting in the sun. Camels carrying treasures, ivory, silk, spices. Gold coins showered onto cheering crowds. The streets of Istanbul erupted in celebration. But behind the curtains of her carriage, Fatma Sultan sat motionless. Her face pale, her eyes hollow. Every cheer outside sounded like a funeral drum inside. This was not her triumph. It was her surrender, performed before the eyes of an empire. Her husband-to-be was Kara Mustafa Pasha, a man twice her age, a commander hardened by war. To the people he was a hero. To Fatma he was a stranger with power over her fate. Chroniclers describe him as ambitious, calculating, more devoted to politics than to affection. For him this marriage was a prize, a seal of favor from the dynasty itself. For Fatma, it was a chain around her life. The ceremony itself was swift. The marriage contract was signed with the Sultan's blessing. Fatma, veiled and silent, was led through rituals of prayer and submission. The hall glittered with gold and silk, but to her it was only a stage, a performance where she played the part of obedience. She spoke no vows of love, only words of duty. Every phrase, every gesture, reminded her that she did not belong to herself. She belonged to the empire. The city feasted, whole oxen roasted, fountains of sherbet flowed, musicians played into the night. The people of Istanbul danced in joy, never suspecting that within the palace walls their princess trembled in silence. When the banquet ended, the true ritual began. Fatma was led by eunuchs into the bridal chamber. Her body was perfumed once more, her garments layered with silk. Veils covered her face, jewels weighed down her arms. She walked slowly, every step echoing like a death march. For 600 years, Historians wrote of the glory of Ottoman weddings. But what they did not write, what they censored, was the terror of this night. In this chamber, no audience watched, no music played, only silence. And in that silence, the weight of fear crushed her. Whispers say that princesses were often given cups of opium or sherbet laced with sedatives, meant to calm their nerves, or perhaps to dull their resistance. Some said this was mercy. Others said it was cruelty silencing their will. Fatma's eyes grew heavy. She clutched her hands so tightly that her knuckles turned white. At last, the groom entered. For him it was victory. For her, it was the end of childhood. Witnesses, though forbidden to speak, later whispered that Fatma trembled so violently she could not rise from the bed. The air was thick with incense, yet to her it felt suffocating. No records tell what happened next. Chroniclers remained silent. Clerics turned away, but gossip, carried in hushed voices through the palace corridors, told of tears, of struggle, of a ritual more terrifying than any battlefield. Why do the chronicles remain silent? Why do official histories describe feasts and parades, but never what happened in the bridal chamber? Because these nights were not triumphs, they were traumas. They revealed the empire's darkest secret, that its daughters, though born to silk and gold, lived as sacrifices to politics. For the world, Fatima Sultan's wedding was a celebration. For her it was a night of dread, and though the chronicles fell silent, her silence spoke louder than any empire's glory. The morning after the wedding, the city woke to celebration. Drums still echoed, musicians still played, and the people believed their princess had entered a life of joy. But behind the palace gates, the truth was very different. From that night onward, Fatma Sultan's life was no longer her own. Her husband, Kara Mustafa Pasha, treated her not as a wife but as a seal of power, a living contract that tied him to the throne. She lived in wealth, yes. Silks, jewels, servants, all hers. But wealth without freedom is another kind of prison. Every word she spoke was monitored. Every visit was approved by guards. Every letter she wrote could be read, copied, and censored. Her childhood brilliance, the poetry, the astronomy, the debates with scholars, faded into silence. No scholar dared record her thoughts. No poet sang of her sorrow. The empire had turned a girl into a symbol, and symbols do not speak. Only her mother, the powerful Kosem Sultan, understood her suffering. Kosem herself had risen from concubine to queen mother, mastering palace politics with cunning and iron will. She ruled empires from behind curtains, orchestrating wars and successions. But even Kosem could not undo the ritual of the wedding night. She could not give her daughter freedom. Some whispered that Kosem comforted Fatma in secret, warning her that the only way to survive was to hide her pain, to let silence become her armor. The silence took its toll. Fatma's health declined. She withdrew from public life, rarely appearing at feasts or ceremonies. Her voice, once bright and commanding, was reduced to faint whispers. Some say she poured her sorrow into secret writings, poems hidden in the corners of books, never meant to be seen. Others say she simply let her words die inside her. The girl who once gazed at the stars now stared only at the walls of her chamber. The brilliance that once promised to outshine the empire was extinguished by the empire itself. Fatma Sultan was not alone. For centuries, Ottoman princesses shared her fate. Each one born into luxury ended in sacrifice. They were married off to pashas and governors, used as tools to secure loyalty. Some lived long but hollow lives, their brilliance erased by silence. Others died young, worn down by sorrow and isolation. A few tried to resist, but resistance always ended in tragedy. Their stories rarely appear in chronicles. Instead, the records speak of armies, conquests, and sultans. The voices of daughters were erased. An empire that conquered cities could not conquer its own fear of women's freedom. And so it silenced them. Why do we know so little of Fatma Sultan? Why are the details of her life blurred, her fate uncertain? Because history itself chose silence. Chroniclers, funded by the court, were forbidden to record what truly happened to the princesses. Only whispers carried in rumor and song survived. That is why these stories feel incomplete, half erased, half remembered. The empire censored them for 600 years, and yet, the silence did not win entirely. For in every palace corridor, in every rumor passed from servant to servant, in every fragment of gossip carried through centuries, their suffering was remembered. not as official history but as whispered truth. The screams of that first wedding night, though never recorded in ink, echo still like ghosts trapped in marble. So when we speak of the Ottoman Empire, the armies, the conquests, the palaces of gold, we must also remember what was hidden. The daughters of the dynasty raised in luxury yet broken by ritual. Fatima Sultan's story is not just hers. It is the story of countless princesses silenced for centuries, and perhaps it is also a warning that even the most powerful empires conceal their darkest truths not in the battlefield, but in the shadows of their own palaces. The empire is gone. The palaces remain, but if you listen closely through the stones of Topkapi, you may still hear them. The voices of the silenced princesses, whispering across 6 centuries.